Even in today's pop culture landscape, where almost every franchise is trying to create a universe, Dune is one of the most well-realized worlds out there. With more characters than an average MCU outing and a lore that reaches back centuries, Dune is the kind of story that you just can't seem to escape. Despite this, we often tend to forget that this is a world inhabited by several extremely powerful characters, who could give any superhero a run for their money. It's genuinely difficult to keep track of all the warriors that appear in the Dune books, as the sheer number of these characters could overwhelm even the most enthusiastic of fans. But don't worry, because we here at Marvelous Videos have decided to compile this list of the most powerful beings in the Dune universe, which will undoubtedly make your job easier. However, before we move ahead, please take a moment to hit the like and subscribe buttons. It might just be a small click for you, but for us it means an awful lot. With that out of the way, it's time to take that daily dose of spice, because here we go. Paul Atreides, Muad'Dib. There's no character place to begin this list than the prophesized one himself, Paul Atreides. Throughout this monumental tale, Paul has gone by numerous names and titles, such as Duke, Kwisatz Haderach, Pesha Emperor, and Lisan al-Gaib. The one common thing between all these titles from different cultures is that each indicates the incredible power Paul wields across the known universe. To say that Paul was special from the very beginning would be an understatement, as the boy's birth was planned to the T by members of the Bene Gesserit. Now, the next part of this entry spoils one of the most crucial twists in the Dune story, so be warned. Well, turns out that Paul comes from two of the greatest houses in the entire universe, the Atreides and the Harkonnens. Though his maternal lineage was unknown for a long time, we eventually find that the Bene Gesserit had especially chosen Jessica as she was secretly the natural daughter of Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. Though Jessica was initially directed to bear a daughter, she went against the Sisterhood's wishes due to her unyielding love for the Duke. Due to Paul's privileged upbringing, the boy was trained in multiple disciplines from a very early age under illustrious teachers like Thufir Hawat, Duncan Idaho, Gurney Halleck, and Dr. Yueh. Jessica also trained the boy in the ways of the Bene Gesserit, and Paul developed an understanding of the Sisterhood's techniques even before he landed on the desert planet of Arrakis. After arriving on Arrakis, Paul found himself at the center of an intergalactic conflict. This was extremely instrumental to the boy's growth, as he was forced to spend a considerable amount of time with the fierce Fremen after the massacre of his forces. Here, his power grew as he gained command over Fremen's techniques and skills, which allowed him to become a formidable desert warrior. Meanwhile, the prolonged exposure to spice also enhanced Paul's latent prescient abilities, which enabled him to bridge space and time. Through his visions and dreams, Paul began to see glimpses of the future, and his predictions grew precise to the point where they defied even four-dimensional explanations. By the end of Paul's life, his abilities had grown so strong that he could perceive and interact with the world even without his eyesight. For most of his life, Paul knew exactly where everyone would be and what they would do, which kind of ensured his success in almost every conflict he participated in. Paul is also proficient in the use of the weirding way, which allows him to strike an opponent at unimaginable speeds. Moreover, Paul's voice is powerful enough to bend even the strongest individuals to his will. All these abilities indicate that Paul Atreides belongs at the very top of this list. Leto Atreides II, the God Emperor. Well, our next entry is pretty close to Paul and inherits a lot of his skills from the Emperor. Leto II is the biological son of Paul and was born to the Emperor's Fremen concubine, Cheney Kynes. In the books, Cheney developed a fatal melange addiction to overcome her infertility, which led to Leto and his twin sister Ghanima being pre-born. Both the twins were imbued with centuries of ancestral knowledge and even inherited Paul's clairvoyance and prescience. Leto was named after his grandfather and spent his early days in the Fremen stronghold of Tabor. Cheney passed shortly after the twins' birth due to the extreme amounts of spice in her system, which reacted with the contraceptives put in her food by Paul's legal wife. Leto II displayed great latent powers even in his early days, and he began seeing visions of the future, which were quite similar to his father's. At around 9 years of age, Leto began feeling the mysterious presence of a skin that was not his own, and this led him to the discovery of the Golden Pat, which was previously attempted by his father. After facing an attack by the Lhasa tigers, Leto decided to go into exile and slipped into total anonymity. He used this time to develop his power and knowledge under total seclusion. The boy would later chance upon a sand trout farm and use his ancestral knowledge and experience to tame the flatworms. He used his spice-saturated blood to trick the worms into thinking that he was a nutritious bag of water. This marked the beginning of Leto's conversion into a hybrid organism, as the boy began to don skin that was not his own. This new form covered the entirety of Leto's body, apart from his face, and this transformation drastically enhanced the boy's attributed strength, speed, reflexes, durability, and water conservation. The transformation made Leto almost invulnerable and allowed him to eventually claim the title of God Emperor. He ruled over the empire with an iron fist, administering swift justice through the combined might of the Fremen warriors and the Sardaukar adversaries. Due to Leto's foresight and tyrannical control over his people, the Atreides Empire soon transcended the known boundaries of the universe and expanded to new star systems and other galaxies. Though Leto might seem almost impossible to defeat, the Emperor began to develop a strange vulnerability to water due to his sand trout skin. This weakness eventually led to the God Emperor's defeat, but the man still stands among the strongest individuals in the entire Dune saga. Lady Jessica. Lady Jessica of the Atreides has to be one of the most crucial and intriguing characters in this epic tale. She is said to be the result of Bene Gesserit's breeding and was born as the illegitimate child of Tanidia Nerys and Vladimir Hekinan. The identities of Jessica's parents were guarded carefully by the Sisterhood, under whom Jessica was raised. Jessica's time with Bene Gesserit made her extremely proficient in all the techniques and methods used by the Sisters, and she soon grew into one of their most influential members. The secret cult chose Jessica as the concubine to Leto, as she was to give birth to a daughter who would eventually be wed to the vile psychopath Feyd Rautha Harkonnen. This would not only diffuse the tensions between the two great houses, but also give rise to Kwisatz Haderach, a super-powerful being with the collective knowledge of all his ancestors. However, the Bene Gesserit's plans would eventually fail, as Jessica decided to disobey her orders and give birth to Paul due to her love for the Duke. Many years later, Jessica arrives at Arrakis and joins a band of Fremen after surviving the assault on the Iraqians' governor's mansion. Due to Jessica's abilities as a Bene Gesserit, as well as a relationship with the Messiah Paul, she was chosen as the CH's Reverend Mother. To accomplish this, Jessica had to go through the process of ingesting the highly toxic water of life, which granted her access to all the memories of the preceding Reverend Mothers. Jessica watched patiently as her son's wrathful reign wreaked havoc across the universe, and only returned to Araxis to observe her grandchildren for any signs of abomination. She also sought to return the control of her bloodline to the Sisterhood, but soon discovered that her regent daughter had been possessed by the ego memory of her late father. The consequences of Jessica's decisions had far-reaching implications that stretched on for thousands of years after her death. Due to this, it's pretty undeniable that she's one of the greatest characters in the entire saga. Shaihulud. Shaihulud is the Fremen term for sandworms, who rule over the unforgiving sands of Arrakis. Fremen's terms often tend to be more descriptive, and even in this case, Shaihulud alludes to more than just a worm in the sand. The Fremen believe that the sandworm is a true manifestation of the one God that created and governs our universe. Thus, the term Shaihulud is considered sacred and is meant to be spoken with awe, fear, or respect. The term also has numerous poetic translations that refer to the size, age, and power of the sandworm, such as Old Man of the Desert, Old Father Eternity, and Grandfather of the Desert. The sandworms are autotrophic animals whose existence is extremely crucial for the creation of spice. These highly territorial creatures can grow to the size of 450 meters long, but some Fremen myths speak of worms as long as 1,000 meters near the south pole of Arrakis. The worm's skin is nigh invulnerable and appears like a semi-metallic armor made of numerous scales. The approach of sandworms can be detected through the dry lightning that occurs around the breach point, as these creatures release static electricity while making their way out of the dunes. Despite all their strength, the sandworms are still pretty vulnerable to water and can cause the creature's biological systems to become unstable, which leads to a violent and painful death for the Shaihulud. Duncan Idaho, various Gola iterations. At first glance, Duncan Idaho might seem to be just another loyal Atreides soldier with exceptional combat skills, especially if you know the character from just the films. However, people who have been through the novels are undoubtedly familiar with the fact that Duncan dies in the original story after the Sardaukar assault on Arrakis, sacrificing his life while getting Paul and Jessica to safety. However, this unrelenting warrior was brought back to this plane through a series of Gola incarnations over the next 3,500 years. As a Gola reincarnation, Idaho would transcend his role as a soldier and grow into one of the most important figures in all of Dune. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, so let's just start with Duncan's tragic beginnings. Duncan was born to two lower-class parents in Caladan, but the pair soon discovered that their son had been blessed with great intelligence and military aptitude during a regular Atreides assessment. Soon the boy's talents were recognized, and he was brought in as an apprentice for House Gima. With regular training, Duncan's abilities grew exponentially, and he gained numerous military awards for his service. Right after his graduation, Duncan was drafted into the War of the Assassins between House Gima and House Mauritani. On the battlefield, Idaho proved himself to be a true military genius, capable of planning and conducting all kinds of military campaigns. He also had a knack for technicalities and could repair force shields, create linguistically complex battle languages, design support facilities, and improvise weapons depending on the circumstances. He was one of the first members of the House Atreides to approach the brutish Fremen and proved himself to be a pretty competent diplomat. Though Duncan was one of the most powerful combatants in the entire series, he failed to predict the assault on House Atreides and had to find an escape when the Sardaukar began their attack. He proved his loyalty yet again by guiding Lady Jessica and Paul to safety, but lost his life in the process. Even during his last stand, Duncan took on an astonishing number of Sardaukar commandos all alone, allowing Paul and Jessica the opportunity to make their way out. After Duncan's passing, his body was frozen and sent to Bene Tleilax's axolotl tanks for regeneration. This enabled Duncan Idaho to be reincarnated multiple times in the story. Over the centuries, all of Duncan's Golas retained his original physical characteristics, as well as his effortless charm. The first among these was Duncan Haight, who still showed some deviations from Duncan's prime. Duncan's last incarnation occurred in 13724 when he served as the commander of the God Emperor, and he even played a key role in the coup against Emperor Paul Muad'Dib Atreides. Due to Duncan's incredible achievements and unbelievable exploits as a military commander, his appearance on this list shouldn't be a surprise. Darwi Adrada. This is one of those characters who has yet to make an appearance in the films. Despite this, Reverend Mother Darwi Adrada is known to be one of the most influential characters in the Bene Gesserit. She was picked as a member of the Sisterhood at a young age due to her special genetic traits. It's believed that she comes from the ancient Atreides bloodline, but also has Harkonnen and Corrino genes. This makes her lineage one of the most powerful in the entire series, as it combines three of the largest houses in the entire Dune saga. With time, Darwi rose through the ranks of the Sisterhood and soon attained the highest position in the organization, becoming Mother Superior at a relatively young age. Her time as the Mother Superior was strewn with conflict as she was forced to lead her faction through the tumultuous War of the Sisterhoods. It's been noted that Darwi attained the position of Mother Superior due to her presence during the death of her predecessor, Mother Superior Taraza. With her newfound influence, Darwi began interacting with Belendam Old Tamerlane and even the Bene Gesserit High Council. Despite this, she was forced to deal with a bunch of new issues like the internal opposition growing within the Sisterhood, bringing up the clone of Bashar and the training of Marbella in the Bene Gesserit ways. Though Darwi Adrada was blessed with a natural knack for diplomacy and leadership, she often chose pretty unconventional tactics in conflict. To some, these moves might have been brilliant, but they could also lead to unprecedented amounts of violence under the wrong circumstances. Despite this, Adrada managed to bring notable changes in society and was completely devoted to the survival of the human race, even at the cost of her own life. Darwi Adrada's influence and intellect make her pretty deserving of a place on this list.
My mother wasn't that complex. Neither of you would be here. She would...
Gima Atreides. Gima holds one of the most powerful positions in the series as Paul's daughter and Leto II's biological sister. Gima and Leto II were born to Cheney and began sipping at the water of conception right after their birth. Gima and her brother were raised by Princess Irulan, who managed to form quite a bond with the twins. However, this bond was severed when she learned of Irulan's part in orchestrating Cheney's death. Gima and her brother Leto were labeled as abominations by Bene Gesserit, as the cult was extremely afraid of the memory lives retained by the children. Ganima's powers also began manifesting from a young age, with one of Jessica's reports to the Sisterhood stating that whenever Ganima was under stress, she could establish a state of constant hypnotic suppression through her mother's interventions. When Leto gained control of his empire, Ganima took over the breeding program, which was created to unite houses with desirable genetic characteristics. She was forced to nominally marry her brother at sign, which allowed her to resume her studies under the tutelage of different Atreides scribes and the former Carino prince Harkal Ada, aka Faradin. Faradin and Ganima would eventually fall in love and give birth to 10 children. Ganima used her expertise to train all her children in academic disciplines and prana bindu control. The pair faced numerous assassination attempts over the years, but the family managed to flourish nonetheless. By the time of her death, Ganima found that she had grown extremely distant from her brother and decided to join her ancestors and agreed to be submerged in someone else's consciousness.
I told you he is here now.
Alia Atreides. With a moniker like Saint Alia the Knife, it isn't a surprise that Alia Atreides is a true badass. She's the biological sister of Paul and was born to Jessica after the assault on Arrakis. Due to the station of her birth, Alia is intricately connected to some of the greatest houses in the known universe. Alia is one of the first abominations to be born in the saga, and she began displaying her powers at a pretty young age. The Fremen who raised her even began calling her Cone Tween, which translates to female death spirit who walks without feet. She was already equivalent to a reverend mother at the moment of her birth, as she was exposed to the water of life while she was still in the womb. The problem, however, is that these abominations are oddly susceptible to the other personalities contained within something called the other memory. The other memory is essentially a collection of ancestral egos and memories that can only be accessed by the members of the Bene Gesserit. Without the formation of a strong identity within the child, it's very easy for villainous ancestral egos to take possession of the body. In Ganima's case, it was her maternal grandfather, the vile Baron Harkonnen, who came to take control. Though Ganima's essence isn't as strong as her twin brother Leto's, she can still use it in some pretty creative ways. She can use her psychic abilities to project thoughts and images into others' minds and even plant memories. Ganima's Fremen upbringing made her into a capable warrior, and her exploits with the Kriz knife on the battlefield earned her the sacred epithet Saint Alia of the Knife. However, with time, Ganima began to display erratic behavior and grew into a power-hungry maniac. This is the influence of Baron Harkonnen, which further provokes Alia into abusing her power as the regent and even compels her to perform sexual acts. Duncan's Gola eventually realizes that Alia has finally succumbed to her vulnerabilities as an abomination and facilitates Paul's return in the form of a preacher. Alia, as a character, demonstrates how even the strongest in the Dune saga can be brought down by their family histories. Cheney. Cheney is undoubtedly one of the more popular characters in the series, who possesses both political influences as well as actual combat skills. Most fans believe her to be Paul's one true love, and official records recognize Cheney as the royal concubine of the Emperor Paul Muad'Dib. Like most Fremen, Cheney is a resilient and tough individual, capable of surviving in even the worst of situations and environments. In the novels, she's the daughter of half-Fremen paleontologist Liet Kynes and herbalist Furula. Cheney Cheney developed her skills in combat through continuous training under different Fremen masters and soon grew into one of the most formidable fighters from her primary residency, C.H. Tabor. After the Harkonnen invasion, Paul and his mother Jessica came to find refuge with the rest of Cheney's Fremen band. Though Cheney initially saw Paul and Jessica as outsiders, she soon warmed up to the young Duke, and the two embarked on a tumultuous relationship during their time in the desert. After Paul's ascension, the newly crowned emperor decided to take as his wife the eldest daughter of House Corrino, Princess Irulan, which led to Cheney and Paul's separation. Despite this, Jessica remains pretty certain that history would remember Cheney as Paul's one true wife. After Paul took over the reins of the empire, Cheney would be assigned chambers inside the Colossus Arakan Palace. It's said that Cheney suffered from numerous fertility issues during this period, as her food was often filled with contraceptives planted by Princess Irulan, who wanted to prevent Cheney from becoming the sole bearer of Paul's children. These preventive measures were ultimately a failure, as Cheney began consuming large amounts of spice to counter her infertility. This allowed her to conceive and even accelerated the pregnancy, leaving Cheney's body completely exhausted. She also developed a crippling addiction to spice, which ultimately led to her demise, but she was able to give birth to Leto II and Ghanima right before her passing. Her remains were interred under the humongous crypt beneath Leto II's desert citadel. Cheney remained a defiant and righteous individual until the very end, and each of her actions had a massive impact on the storyline, earning her this spot on the list. Miles Teg. Our next entry is a man who doesn't appear in the Dune saga until the very end. Despite this, Miles Teg's strength and power are visible even in his brief appearances during the War of the Sisterhoods. A highly regarded member of the Bene Gesserit, Mentat, and military commander, Miles is probably one of the most decorated individuals on the list. Miles was born as the result of the Bene Gesserit breeding program some 1,500 years after the end of Leto II's reign. The eldest son of Loshi Teg and Lady Janet Roxborough, he was born into the Atreides line with considerable political influence at his disposal. From an early age, the boy underwent rigorous training in the Bene Gesserit ways and began seeing them as the ultimate authority governing his action. Meg bore a striking resemblance to the old Duke, Leo Atreides, and displayed considerable combat prowess. Soon, his powers as a Mentat began to manifest, and he became the ideal military commander. The boy went through advanced Bene Gesserit schooling, and the sisters soon recognized him as a capable warrior, as did Mentat. He spent most of his military career as the commander of the Bene Gesserit's military forces, rising to the position of Supreme Bashat. He also played a pivotal role in the War of the Sisterhoods and was assigned as the trainer for Duncan Idaho's latest Gola. During the conflict, Miles was captured by Tleilaxu's forces and underwent severe torture via T-probe. The unbearable pain Teg suffered during this episode further increased his power by awakening his prescient abilities, which enabled him to escape. Though Teg is a relatively unknown character, at least for casual fans, his diverse range of abilities makes his entry into the list pretty justified.
Sojourner.
Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. Though most of the characters in Dune are morally gray, the Baron is someone who is a villain, a vile and ruthless individual. This tyrant from the Harkonnen faction is a true nightmare to encounter, even at his weakest. We're introduced to Baron Vladimir Harkonnen at the very beginning of the story, and even from a glance, one can tell that this is one of the most repulsive characters in all of fiction. The Baron rules Giedi Prime, his ancestral world, where he makes a living out of the suffering of countless slaves who were unfortunate enough to end up in the service of House Harkonnen. He's known to be one of the wealthiest individuals in the entire universe thanks to his control over the spice trade. He was the main conspirator in the Harkonnen assault on House Atreides, and even managed to convince the Emperor to orchestrate an attack on Arrakis. After the assault, the Baron used the ensuing chaos to gain even more control over the spice-producing planet. The Baron is shown to possess a great mind of strategy and war, capable of planning years into the future. He's also a very patient man who waits until the last moment to unleash his attacks. The Baron is assisted by his nephews Glossu Rabban and Feyd Rautha, both of whom are truly terrifying individuals in their own right. The Baron's often displayed an unrelenting hunger for more power and held on to his his singular goal until his death. But even after his death, the Baron returns from the other memory to gain control of Alia and commit more heinous crimes because the man cannot help himself. The Baron is probably one of the greatest antagonists in all of fiction and has inspired numerous other characters over the years. Thus, he deserves a place on our list. Shadam IVth. At the beginning of the Dune saga, this is the man who occupies the highest position in the entire universe. He was the one behind the great scheme that drew House Atreides to the desert planet of Arrakis, sparking a conflict that would end up consuming generations. The leader of the Carino Empire, Shadam IVth, wields unimaginable power and influence over the entire universe. He sits on the Imperial Golden Lion throne and issues commands through his officers from his ancestral planet of Elrud 9. He's the 80th in a long line of Pesha Emperors and was genuinely seen as a capable ruler until he decided to move against his cousin, Duke Leto Atreides I. He has at his disposal the entire might of the Sardaukar army, who are seen as the most ferocious warriors the universe has ever seen. Due to this, it's pretty difficult to make a move against Shadam, as he rules over the commercial and military activities in the entire universe. However, Shadam eventually succumbs to Paul's vengeful quest and gives up the throne. Shadam would be exiled to Seleucia Secundus along with his daughters and die an unremarkable death in complete seclusion. Bene Gesserit Sisterhood. The Bene Gesserit Sisterhood is the most influential faction in the entirety of Dune. A highly organized and resourceful institution, the Sisterhood has been pulling the strings from the shadows for many, many centuries. Though they began as a religious organization, the Sisters soon began experimenting with ritual mysticism, symbolism, and eugenics. The organization consists of female spies, nuns, scientists, theologians, etc., who use their knowledge to further the Bene Gesserit agenda. The cult has only one objective: to facilitate the return of the prophesied Messiah, Kwisatz Haderach, who would bring true harmony and peace to the world. However, they can get pretty weird with their plans and are not above using dishonorable means to fulfill their goals. The different branches of the order are led by a Reverend Mother who has to undergo and survive spice agony. The one at the very top, however, is called the Reverend Mother Superior, who invokes unwavering loyalty from all the other members of the cult. Each Bene Gesserit member possesses a wide range of abilities and is said to be in complete control of every nerve in their body. They're also extremely accomplished in the use of prana bindu disciplines, which also allow them to perform near supernatural feats which are far beyond the average human being. They can completely control their internal chemistry, which makes them immune to most poisons and can even slow down aging in certain cases. The prana bindu allows them to alter their blood flow, body temperature, heart rate, and even level of consciousness. This can be life-saving in harsh environments and can even be used to trick enemies. The Weirding Way is a style of hand-to-hand combat developed by the Bene Gesserit, which greatly enhances the individual's power, attack speed, and resourcefulness. The most popular of these powers is undoubtedly the Voice, which enables sisters from the Bene Gesserit to control others using speech frequencies. The Truth Sense is another skill that is extremely powerful in political scenarios, as it helps sisters sense when someone is lying or holding back. If you see these women approaching you, run. Guild Navigator. The Guild Navigator, or the Steersman, is a pharmaceutically enhanced human who has developed a highly conditioned form of prescience that can be used to safely traverse interstellar pathways. These creatures are said to be the peak of guild navigation, and the transformation requires the consumption of massive amounts of spice inside a microgravity habitat. These navigators are completely addicted to the substance and must be constantly supplied with melange during journeys. To gain the prescient ability, the navigators were forced to live in rectangular anti-gravity tanks for extended periods, which caused their limbs to atrophy and mutate. Their bodies are said to be oddly elongated, while their internal organs have been completely repositioned. Since supercomputers were banned in the Dune universe after the Butlerian Jihad, the Guild Navigators were tasked with replacing the machines using their prescient abilities. The Navigators also possess limited divination, which makes them capable of seeing through different aspects of Paul's grand designs. Without the Navigators, most of Dune's world would crash and burn, as there would be no one left to guide us through the stars. Due to this, we have to give the Navigators a place on this list. Thufir Hawat. Thufir Hawat not only occupied one of the most important positions in House Atreides as Master of Assassins, but was also Leto's official mentat. Hawat worked for the house for generations and was involved in crucial duties like security management, anti-espionage, risk management, and protection. Due to his combat prowess, the Mentat was also entrusted with training Paul in war and politics. Most of the houses in the Landsraad were extremely afraid of Hawat owing to his cunning yet honorable nature. Though Thufir remained extremely loyal to House Atreides, he was eventually forced into Harkonnen's service after the assault on Arrakis. The Harkonnens introduced a special position into the Mentat's blood, with the only known antidote being in their possession. The fact that the Baron went to such extreme lengths to get Thufir into his service is a testament to the man's skill and talent. Freman Naibs. Naib refers to the commander who leads a Fremen tribe or CH. The Naib are usually the direct representatives of a tribe and are responsible for voicing out their concerns to the outside world. Many important decisions are usually made by the Naib, who is often assisted by a council of the tribe's wisest men. A Naib is usually chosen through a challenge in which a challenger tries to take the throne when unsatisfied with the predecessor's rule. To remain as Naib, the individual needs to maintain both popularity and political control, as they can be dethroned easily by a superior leader. Piter de Vries. Piter was an exceedingly powerful mentor created especially for the House Harkonnen by Bene Tleilaxu. An unstable sadist with an insatiable bloodlust, he became the Baron's right-hand man and even surpassed his thirst for violence. One of the most brilliant strategists in the entire saga, he played an important role in the assault on Arrakis. He was shown to have a special inclination towards Lady Jessica and even orchestrated the attack on House Atreides in hopes of gaining her as his plaything. Piter was killed during Duke Leto's last stand, where he succumbed to toxic gas emanating from the false tooth planted inside the Duke's mouth. Piter's demise was a huge blow to the Baron, and even hindered the progress he made on Arrakis. Hassimir Fenring. Hassimir Fenring was a renowned assassin who served under House Carina. A genetic eunuch who once had hope of becoming the Kwisatz Haderach, Hassimir made a name for himself as Emperor Shadam IV's right-hand man. Like most Kwisatz Haderach candidates, Fenring was a product of the Bene Gesserit breeding program. Fenring's talent manifested in the form of furtiveness and inner seclusion, making him invisible to even the most powerful of prescient visions. As a vital advisor, Hassimir was extremely instrumental in the efficient functioning of House Carino. The Honored Matras. The Honored Matras emerged as a powerful faction of women who positioned themselves as the primary rivals of the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood. They rose to relevance some 15 centuries after the demise of the God Emperor Leto II. They differed from numerous Bene Gesserit ideologies and deviated greatly from their ancestral origins. The Bene Gesserit often used subtle, non-invasive ways to gain control. But the Honored Matras sought to supersede the entire status quo and gain complete control over all existing factions ruling over the galaxy. Their aggressive strategy led to numerous conflicts as they demanded the enslavement or destruction of all pre-existing power brokers and control mechanisms. To achieve this, the Honored Matras turned to a form of sexual enslavement that required them to develop sexual intercourse into a narcotic process. This would allow them to easily coerce even the most powerful of individuals into total subservience. This method, when performed on notable individuals, allowed the Honored Matras access to endless resources and arms. Their hunger for violence and absolute control make them one of the most formidable groups in the Dune saga. Scytale, face dancer of the Bene Tleilax. Scytale was a face dancer in the service of Bene Tleilax, who became a massive player in the later parts of the story. At the end of Muad'Dib's jihad, Scytale became the Tleilax's stand-in, through whom they participated in the destruction of the royal family. After the birth of Leto and Fanima, Scytale revealed to Paul that this had been his plan all along. He threatened to kill the newborn children unless Paul gave him access to Cheney's flesh so that she could be reawakened as a Ghola. Scytale would die at Paul's hand after this incident, but the Tleilaxu managed to reawaken him and even achieved a sort of immortality through the Ghola. After his reanimation, he was promoted to Tleilaxu Master. Pesha Emperor. The Pesha Emperor is the highest authority in the known universe, and has existed for centuries. The Emperor is inarguably the most powerful individual in the universe, as he wields influence over overall commercial and military activities. The title was initially passed through the Carino bloodline, but was handed over to Paul Atreides after his jihad. The position was finally dissolved after the death of Leto II, as the Imperium fell apart after the loss of their leader. Tleilaxu Master. The Tleilaxu Masters was a secret caste of Bene Tleilax who wielded control over constructs like face dancers and golas. The Masters often used these as instruments to further their agendas and gain more political influence. These Masters can also resist the Bene Gesserit's voice, which makes them a natural rival to the Sisterhood. The Masters are chosen from the face dancers, who have lived several lives as golas and made significant contributions to society. If the service provided by these individuals is satisfactory, they're biologically upgraded into new Masters. Marvelous verdict. This extremely long list makes it evident that all of Dune is littered with extremely powerful characters, each with their own agenda. But what makes this story truly memorable are the intricate relationships between these individuals and organizations, as well as the hidden motives that drive every scene forward. But what do you think? Is there someone that we missed out on? Please let us know in the comments below. That's it for this one, but don't forget to subscribe and stay updated with all our marvelous content. Well then, goodbye till next time.